Alright, we are back. It's 2 years without a video and now 2 in 1 week. So hopefully we can make this somewhat of a pattern. Anyway, hey howdy. Today I wanted to talk about dice in D&D and other popular RPGs and in my personal TTRPG, Fateweaver. So, why am I saying that dice don't matter? Obviously, that's a bit of a red herring, and I don't mean that you don't need dice to play D&D or any other dice-based system. I'm talking about which dice that system chooses to use, what dice I use in my system, and why I don't think that choice matters as much as people seem to think. As per usual, throw any questions in the comments. I'll try my best to answer them quickly. If you're interested in learning more about Fateweaver or even potentially being a part of very early playtesting, please let me know. Let's get into it. Okay, so a bunch of new TTRPG systems have been coming out over the past couple of years, triggered by Hasbro being real twats to their consumer base. And that's led to a lot of new takes on what dice should be used in order to tell stories effectively at the D&D table. As you know, D&D uses a single D20 for most of its rolls, usually in tandem with one other die for damage or bardic inspiration or whatever. Other popular systems in the past have used dice pools to great success, often requiring you to roll a certain number on at least one out of a handful of d6, the number of which is determined by your level of skill in the task you're attempting. What seems to have become a very popular strategy with recent big games, though, is rolling 2 dice and adding the results for most of your skill checks. The reason that's important is because of relatively simple math. On one die, the most extreme results are just as likely as any other result. Right? You have the same chance of rolling a 1 on a d20 as a 9 or a 12 or a 20. Right? That creates a lot of swing in results, especially for damage, because one damage roll might be 6 or 8 or 12 times higher than another roll, even though both of your attacks succeeded. D&D mostly accounts for that swinginess by making the modifiers of your skill checks and damage really high as you level up, and allowing you to make more of them on your turn so they can start to average out. A 19 on a d20 right, means a lot less if you have a plus 11 than if you have a plus 3, for instance. Systems that use 2 dice, though, have a very different spread of results. So on 2 dice, you're a lot less likely to roll the extreme values than you are at the middle ones, which creates a kind of V-shaped probability distribution, where the top is the average of the 2 dice. That allows smaller shifts in modifiers to more reliably increase your results by potentially significant amounts, and makes damage rolls using 2 dice way more predictable. So, if that's true, how does Fateweaver use a d20 for almost every roll in the game, still leaves its modifiers low, and still maintains reliable results? And why do I use the d20 to begin with? I'll answer that question first. I love the d20. It's a good die. Sue me. It carries a lot of importance in my mind. It feels auspicious to roll, and the really easy to calculate 5% chance of crit fail and 5% chance of critical success feels like the right distribution to me. I also know that almost every TTRPG player out there has one and wants to use it. If I moved to draw steel, I'd be a little bummed that I only have to use my d10s most of the time when I've got all these other cool dice that are just sitting around. Mainly, people like to know what's expected of them, right? And knowing almost every roll in the game requires them to just pick up one d20 is at least as easy, if not more, than draw steel's 2d10s or Daggerheart's 2d12s, but also sometimes d20s in combat, I think. I'm not super familiar with the rules. I do find that a little odd. That's okay, though. The first question requires a more nuanced answer. And this is where important mechanics start to actually come in, and why I think dice choice doesn't really matter. Rolls in Fateweaver aren't pass-fail. In D&D, you either succeed or you don't. You either hit or you don't, right? You either save against being turned into a goldfish or you don't, right? You get it. In Fateweaver, similarly to a lot of other new systems, right, including Draw Steel, your result on the die can have a few different in-game outcomes, which we can refer to as success states. Daggerheart, as an example, has a few success states. You can roll a crit, but you could also succeed with hope, meaning something extra good happens. You could succeed with fear, meaning the GM gets a resource to use against you. You could fail with hope, so you don't succeed but something good happens. Or you can fail with fear, which really sucks. MCDM's Draw Steel has 3 success states divided into tiers. Notably, they don't have a complete failure, meaning you never make 0 progress on your turn, and I actually like that a lot. D&D, by contrast, feels a lot less dramatic, right? If rolling a success is equivalent to yes and in improv, then rolling a failure is kind of just a flat no. Draw Steel, Fateweaver, and to some extent Daggerheart all try to turn that into a no, but something else cool happens, right? Fateweaver, especially using the d20, has 5 success states. Critical failures are a natural 1 on the die. They're the only time that you are completely shut down, right? You miss an attack, move on. That sucks, but sometimes stuff can be really bad once in a while, you know? Otherwise, if you roll a 7 or less after modifications to your roll, you get a partial failure, which means you didn't get what you wanted, but a new opportunity opens up. If you were trying to sneak around the city guards on watch after curfew, they probably haven't seen you yet, but they thought they heard something in your direction, and one of them is coming over for a closer look. An 8 to 13 on the roll is a partial success. You got most of what you wanted, but it comes with an unintended consequence. You snuck past those guards, but as you were looking back to make sure you weren't followed, you walked around the corner and straight into one of the Baron's spies, running a conspiratorial message across town. Can you resolve this quietly? A 14 or higher on the roll is a full success. You more or less get what you wanted, you've moved past the guards, dodged the spy, and now at the back door to the castle. A natural 20 on the die is a critical success, which means something great happens. Not only did you evade everyone perfectly, but it just so happens that you appear at the back door, a drunk servant stumbles out, leaving the door wide open for you and fully occupying themselves with ridding their stomach of tonight's dinner. That's it. These numbers are always the same, so you'll pick it up pretty quickly and play. Modifiers are relatively low, but extreme rolls don't result in drastically different outcomes. In combat, you don't roll for damage. Each weapon just does a set amount on a success, or half that on a failure. There's obviously more nuance to attacks than that, but that's a topic for another video. The long and the short of it is, you're always making progress in combat, and you're not as subject to the whims of fate in that particular regard. So, why do I say that dice don't matter? Because if you're going to create tiers for dice results to fall into, you're doing the work of homogenizing the dice outcomes already. By creating success states and limiting the swinginess of damage up front, that's not further aided by having a differently shaped probability distribution of dice outcomes. Right? Using a d20, I know that crit fails and successes each happen 5% of the time, and the other 3 success states each have a 30% chance probability of occurring for somebody with no modifiers in their roll. Right? Using 2 dice on top of that would either just widen the middle percentage slightly, which doesn't make things more interesting or balanced necessarily, or it would require you to restructure the results for the table to bring those probabilities back to near equality, basically just creating more work for yourself as a designer. At the end of the day, the dice your system is built on don't hold any inherent merit. As the old adage goes, it's not size that matters, it's how you use it. Thank you for watching. Cheers.